Our landlord raised rent illegally, so I united the tenants and we got him fined heavily. I never expected to become the leader of a tenant rebellion, but here I am. A few months ago, I was just quietly paying my rent on time in my little apartment, barely knowing my neighbors. Now I'm the person who rallied everyone in our building to stand up to our landlord's illegal bull *********, and guess what? We actually won. The greedy jerk got hit with massive fines, but not before a roller coaster of drama that I'm still trying to process. It all started last winter when our landlord, Mr. Burns, not his real name but it fits, decided to raise the rent on all of us in the middle of our leases. Just like that, we all got notices taped to our doors saying that starting next month, our rent would jump by anywhere from $300 to $500. No explanation beyond some vague increased maintenance costs excuse. It was insane. Most of us have yearly leases that clearly lock in the rent until renewal, which was still months away. What he was doing wasn't just shady, it was straight up illegal in our state. At first, I thought maybe I misunderstood the notice. I'm no legal expert, and I'd never had any issues with renting before. But a $400 hike with barely a few weeks' notice? That couldn't be right. I dug out my lease, and, sure enough, it stated the rent amount is fixed for the term of the lease. Plus, I remembered reading something about our city having a cap on rent increases even at renewal time, something like max 5% a year, and he was trying to jack mine up almost 20%. My blood started boiling. I went to talk to Mr. Burns directly. I tried to be calm and reasonable. Literally, I said something like, "Hey, I got this notice about a rent increase, but my lease hasn't expired. There must be a mistake." Let me tell you, he didn't even pretend to be polite. He smirked and said, "It's no mistake. If you don't like it, you're free to leave. Plenty of people would kill to live here." That was his response. I was floored. I argued that we had a binding lease agreement, and he just shrugged and said, "Sue me if you think you can. Good luck finding a lawyer." Then he basically dismissed me by shutting his office door in my face. I walked out of that meeting with my heart pounding, partly with anger, partly with fear. I'm not a confrontational person normally. I hate conflict. But this felt so unjust. This was my home, you know? I've lived here 3 years, always paid on time, never caused trouble. I felt powerless for about all of 5 minutes, and then I decided screw that. If he was going to bully me, he was probably bullying others too. I started knocking on my neighbors' doors that same evening. In our building, we have 12 units. I knew a couple folks by name in passing, but many were strangers beyond a hello in the hallway. Still, I went door to door, notice in hand, asking if they got one too. Every single apartment had gotten the same rent hike notice, and everyone was pissed off and or scared. One family with kids, a couple in 2B, was panicking because there's no way they could afford an extra $500 a month. An elderly lady in 1A was already on a fixed income and near tears, thinking she'd have to move out after 20 years. A young guy down the hall, Unit 3C, was furious and talking about how he'd already had run-ins with Mr. Burns over broken appliances not being fixed. It became clear our landlord had been an absolute nightmare for a while. I'd just been lucky to not have major issues until now. Right there in the hallway, a bunch of us had an impromptu meeting. People were venting, scared, unsure what to do. That's when I sort of found myself stepping up. I said something like, "He's doing this because he thinks we'll just roll over. But if we all stand together, we have rights, and he can't ignore us." I wasn't even sure that was true as I said it, but I hoped it was. It felt better than feeling helpless. We exchanged phone numbers and decided to have a real tenant meeting that weekend in the laundry room, the only space big enough for all of us. Over the next couple of days, I did some homework. I called a local tenant rights organization and got some free advice. They confirmed my hunch. What the landlord was doing was blatantly illegal. They advised us to write a formal letter as a group citing the law and demanding he rescind the increase, or we take legal action. They also mentioned we could report him to the city's housing authority. Knowledge is power, baby. I printed out some info to share with the neighbors at the meeting. Come Saturday, we had 10 out of 12 units represented in the laundry room. The other 2 couldn't make it, but were in the loop. We formed what basically became a tenants association on the spot. I sort of got nominated, or railroaded, into being the spokesperson, mostly because I was the one who brought everyone together and had gathered info. I was nervous, but also determined. We drafted a letter that night. It was strongly worded but respectful, at least at that point. We all signed it. It basically said, we knew our rights, his notice was illegal, and if he didn't cancel the rent hike and negotiate fairly, we'd file a complaint with the city and seek legal remedies. We slid the letter under the door of his on-site office. He lives in a fancy penthouse apartment on the top floor, by the way, separate from us plebs. Then we waited. And guess what? Big surprise. He completely ignored it. The next week, Each of us got a reply not from him but from some law firm, probably one of those cheap lawyers he hired, basically doubling down. The letter claimed that the rent increase was within his rights due to some clause about operating costs, and if we didn't pay the new amount, we'd be in violation of our leases and could face eviction. That letter scared a couple of the tenants pretty badly, but it just made me more angry. The clause he referenced was BS. I read it. It was about if property taxes increased or something like that, and even then, he had to give proper notice. He was bluffing with legalese, trying to scatter us. We got back together and decided, unanimously, to move forward with reporting him. One of the tenants, 3C guy, who was super handy with paperwork, helped fill out a complaint to the city's housing department. We included a copy of the bogus rent increase notice and a summary of our attempts to resolve it. We also pooled some money for a consultation with a tenant's rights attorney. The local org helped connect us with someone who gave us a discounted rate. Around this time, I noticed a couple of strange things. First, one of our neighbors who had been all gung-ho at the start, a guy named Mike from 2D, suddenly went quiet and stopped participating. He'd avoid us in the hall and didn't come to meetings. I tried talking to him, and he mumbled something about not wanting trouble, and maybe it was better to just work something out privately with the landlord. It raised my suspicions. Later, I found out Mr. Burns had approached Mike separately and offered him a deal. If Mike signed a paper agreeing to the increase and promising not to complain, he'd only raise Mike's rent by $150 instead of $400, essentially bribing him to break our unity. And it worked. Mike took the deal and bailed on the group. We felt pretty betrayed, but some of us also understood why he did it. He was struggling financially and was scared. Still, it was a blow to morale to have someone turn coat. The second thing, little accidents started happening around the building. The hallway lights on our floor mysteriously went out and weren't fixed for weeks. We ended up buying our own bulbs. The front door lock, which Mr. Burns is supposed to maintain, jammed, leaving some folks locked out late at night. I have zero proof it was intentional, but it felt fishy, like he was trying to make our living situation worse on purpose. The worst was when the heating went out during a cold snap in February, conveniently just after we filed the official complaint. The repairman, when he finally came after lots of calls, quietly mentioned the boiler hadn't been serviced in years, which is the landlord's responsibility. We were livid and freezing. We ended up calling the city about that too, which added to his troubles. Turns out there are penalties for failing to provide heat. So here we are, a bunch of ordinary people, suddenly in a protracted battle with this slumlord. We got the city's housing enforcement involved, thanks to our complaint. An investigation opened. It helped that we kept meticulous records. Every notice, every email, a log of issues like the heat outage, etc. Meanwhile, Mr. Burns started posting ominous notices about building policy violations, clearly aimed at us troublemakers. For example, he tried to say no gatherings in common areas without permission, targeting our little meetings, and threatened to fine people for silly things like having doormats outside their apartments. Pure intimidation tactics. We didn't take the bait. Instead, we forwarded everything to the housing investigator. The legal process wasn't super fast, but it was moving. The city scheduled a hearing where tenants could present their evidence of the illegal rent increase. We all showed up, damn near the whole building, minus Trader Mike and a couple who couldn't take off work. We each testified, or at least gave statements about what happened. I spoke on behalf of a few who were nervous. Not gonna lie, it was scary, but also empowering to lay it all out in front of officials. Mr. Burns showed up with an expensive lawyer, looking all annoyed that we dared challenge him. He gave some sob story about increased costs and tried to paint us as a small, disruptive group, but the paper trail and the number of tenants complaining clearly contradicted his narrative. And then, sweet justice. The housing board, or judge, whatever he was, some official overseeing the case, basically laughed at the landlord's so-called defense. In the end, they ruled that the rent hike was indeed illegal, and they ordered him to not only roll back the rents to the original amounts, but also fined him for every violation. The fine was calculated per tenant per improperly issued notice. On top of that, because we also reported the no-heat incident, he got hit with additional fines for code violations. In total, it came out to something like $50,000 in penalties. I swear, I almost fainted when I heard that number. That's probably more than a year of my rent. Mr. Burns went beet red with anger. His lawyer argued or pleaded to reduce it, but the decision was final. He had 30 days to pay the fines or face further legal action, and he was ordered to immediately cease any retaliatory measures, with the officials pointedly referencing the heat and other issues we raised. We walked out of that hearing like an underdog sports team that just won the championship. We honestly had a group hug in the lobby. Even the gruff older guys were tearing up and high-fiving. It was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. So as of now, we all just got official letters that our rents will remain as they were for the duration of the leases, and Mr. Burns was formally reprimanded by the city. It's a huge victory for us. A few of the tenants are talking about throwing a little celebration potluck in the courtyard, and inviting the housing investigator who helped us, haha. I'm proud of what we accomplished together. A few months ago, I didn't even know most of these people. Now we've got a group chat and talk almost daily, not just about landlord stuff, but life stuff. It's like we turned a crappy situation into a community. That said, I'm also not naive. I know this isn't necessarily over. Landlords as vindictive as Mr. Burns don't just roll over and become saints overnight. But at least we prove we have power when we stand together, and we hit him where it hurts, his wallet and his pride. Right now, I'm just savoring this win. We fought the law, and, for once, we won. If anything crazy happens next, I'll update, but hopefully this is the end of our landlord saga. I just really wanted to share this wild ride, and maybe encourage others not to let bullies walk all over you. Update 1. So, I really hope that would be the triumphant end of the story, but if there's one thing I've learned, it's that slumlords don't give up easily. It's been about a month since our victory, and things have been eventful to say the least. At first, we all breathed a sigh of relief after the hearing. The first week afterward was quiet. Too quiet. It was almost eerie how we didn't see Mr. Burns around the building at all. Usually, he'd be stomping around, glaring at us or nitpicking something. Instead, we only saw his maintenance guy, who suddenly was super responsive to repair requests. Imagine that. We thought maybe he was laying low, or, hopefully, learned his lesson. Some neighbors even joked that maybe he'd slunk away to lick his wounds. Well, turns out he was busy plotting. We got a letter, this time addressed to each of us individually by certified mail, from Mr. Burns' attorney, stating that he intended to appeal the city's decision and fine. Basically, he's trying to get out of paying that $50,000 and undo the ruling about the rent. His argument was absurd. He claimed we misrepresented facts and that the punishment was too harsh for a minor misunderstanding. It made my eyes roll so far back I saw my brain. The appeal hasn't been heard yet, and from what our lawyer contact said, it's unlikely to go far. But it's still stressing everyone out because until it's resolved, there's this question mark. That was just the beginning. Remember how I said I wasn't naive about retaliation? Yeah, it came. Small at first, like notices about routine apartment inspections. That felt very much like him snooping around for any excuse to write us up. Sure enough, during these so-called inspections, which our tenant group made sure to do in pairs like we accompanied the inspector guy he sent, they tried to claim a couple apartments had unauthorized pets or safety hazards. Total BS. One family has a small caged bird which is allowed by the lease, and another had string lights on their balcony which weren't even against any rule. We rode back as a group challenging those citations, and nothing came of them. They were empty threats, but it showed he was looking for any little crack to punish us. Then came the big guns. About 2 weeks after the hearing, 3 tenants, including me, got official notices that our leases would not be renewed at the end of their term. Mind you, our leases don't expire for several months. Mine ends in August. But he's already telling us he, quote, will not offer a renewal and expects the premises vacated at lease end. Now this is a slimy move. It's technically legal for a landlord to choose not to renew when a lease is up, unless local laws prevent it. We do have some protections against retaliation, but proving that in court can be tricky. Essentially, he targeted the 3 of us who were most outspoken. I got one, the family in 2B got one, and the young guy from 3C got one. We expected this might happen eventually, but seeing it on paper still felt like a gut punch. It's basically, enjoy your victory, now get out when your lease is over. We immediately looped in the tenants' rights lawyer. She was cautiously optimistic we could fight the non-renewals as retaliatory, given the timing and the fact that we have documented evidence that we were being singled out after making a legal complaint. However, that fight is a separate process and could take time, and it might not succeed if he lies and says he just wanted new tenants or some renovation. Landlords can be sneaky. It's disheartening. We won the battle, but he's trying to win the war by slowly picking us off. Some of my neighbors are frankly scared. The couple in 2B with the kids are considering moving out early anyway, because they don't want the stress of not knowing if they'll be forced out later. I can't blame them. They found a possible place in a nearby town with a more reasonable landlord. Selfishly, I want them to stay and fight with us, but they have to do what's right for their family. On top of that, Mr. Burns had the audacity to show up in person one day and confront me. Yes, directly me. It was in the parking area behind the building. I was unloading groceries from my car when I heard his distinctive gravelly voice say, "Hope you're happy. You think you've won?" I turned around, and there he was, looking downright smug for someone who supposedly got his ass handed to him. I was caught off guard and, honestly, a little scared. I was alone out there. I managed to say, "I won't discuss anything, talk to our lawyer," and try to walk away. And this creep says, "You have no idea what you've started. Enjoy your time here while it lasts." Very villain cliche, I know, but it was actually intimidating in the moment. I just hurried back inside as my heart hammered. I immediately told the others and our lawyer. She suggested I document that encounter in case it constituted harassment. We even considered getting a no-contact order if he kept it up. Thankfully, he hasn't approached me again face-to-face since then. But I'm definitely more wary, like looking over my shoulder whenever I come home. Not a great feeling in your own home. The one silver lining in all this is that our tenant group is still solid. In fact, all this BS has only strengthened the resolve of most of us. We meet regularly. We've even had a city council member reach out after hearing about our case. Turns out, our story made a bit of local news, and Mr. Burns is not the only bad landlord around. There's talk of strengthening tenant protection laws, so go us, I guess. Knowing that, I think Mr. Burns is extra salty because his antics drew public attention, and now he's under a microscope. Serves him right. Interestingly, our turncoat neighbor Mike, the one who took the private deal, has been silent throughout all this. He didn't get a non-renewal notice. Shocker, since he wasn't part of the complaint. But he's been watching things unfold from the sidelines. The other day I ran into him in the mailroom and he actually congratulated me on the fines and asked if we think we can stop the non-renewals. It was awkward, like, dude, you bailed on us but now you're hoping we save your butt too? I just said something like, we're doing what we can. It'd be easier if everyone had been on board. He got a little sheepish. I suspect he's realizing that being the landlord's pet won't protect him if all the good tenants leave, and he's left alone with Mr. Burns. If anything, I bet Burns will raise his rent even more next chance he gets. Loyalty be damned. So where are we now? We've filed a retaliation complaint regarding the non-renewal notices. That's going to be a legal process that might drag on. The housing authority folks clearly see what's happening, but their powers are a bit limited once it's about lease renewal rather than an active lease. If that doesn't pan out, a few of us are prepared to take it to court, or, worst case, we'll at least make sure to make a big public stink about it. We also let the housing investigator know about the intimidation and the bogus inspection crap. They advise us to keep documenting everything. Emotionally, it's tough. I won't lie, a few of us, myself included, have had moments of, was this worth it? Should we have just paid or quietly moved? But then I slap myself, figuratively, and remember how right is right. What he did was wrong, and standing up to it was the right thing. If we all just cave, he gets away with it, and probably will do it to the next tenants too. That thought keeps me going. Plus, for now, thanks to our fight, everyone's rent is back to what it should be, and the building's getting proper maintenance. We collectively won that, and it's not trivial. Mr. Burns has to think twice now before neglecting the heat or anything, because he knows we'll be on his ass with the city in a heartbeat. In a weird way, we're in a standoff. He's trying to bide his time until he can push some of us out, and we're trying to either stop him or prepare for what's next. I'm not sure how it will end. Some tenants might take off regardless, just to avoid the uncertainty. I'm considering my own options too. I love this place, but I'm not keen on living under a landlord who actively hates us. For now, we're staying united and seeing if the law will protect us again. I'll update when we have a clearer outcome, or if Mr. Burns pulls another crazy stunt. It's a bit of an uneasy truce at the moment, but we're not letting our guard down. Update 2, final. It's been about 6 more months, and let me tell you, this saga has been nothing short of exhausting. I wish I could report that everything ended great, that we vanquished the evil landlord and lived happily ever after. Reality is a bit more complicated and messy. The retaliation complaints we filed did move forward. There were mediation sessions and a lot of back and forth with lawyers. In the meantime, our building's vibe shifted. 2 of the families, including the folks in 2B with the kids, decided to relocate over the summer. They found new places and moved out before their leases were even up. Not wanting to gamble on the outcome, we threw them a little farewell party, and they promised to keep in touch. It was heartbreaking to see them go. They had been some of the strongest voices in our fight, but I understood. They needed stability for their kids. For those of us remaining, we trudged on. We actually managed to get a temporary injunction on the non-renewal notices, meaning Mr. Burns couldn't evict us when our lease dates came if the retaliation case was still pending. So I didn't have to move out in August as he threatened, at least not immediately. That was a small legal win in our favor. It felt like we were holding the line, just barely. Then, out of nowhere, a plot twist. Mr. Burns sold the building. Yup, we all got a notice that the property was under new ownership as of last month. A mid-tier property management company bought it. They own a few other rentals around the city. The rumor, confirmed by our ever-resourceful neighbor from 3C, is that between the fines, legal fees, and the bad press, Mr. Burns decided our building wasn't worth the hassle anymore. He cashed out. Honestly, when I heard, I had very mixed feelings. On one hand, ding dong, the witch is dead. The tyrant landlord is gone. But on the other hand, we now have an unknown entity to deal with. And all our outstanding legal stuff? Kinda up in the air. The retaliation case was basically rendered moot by the sale. The new owner isn't bound to renew our leases just because we fought the old guy. And if the old landlord doesn't own the place, there's no one to punish for retaliation now. So what's happening now? Well, the new management company had a meeting with all the tenants. It was very corporate and polite. They said all current leases would be honored. Duh. And that they intend to work with each tenant when renewal time comes. But they also slipped in that they'll be doing some renovations and upgrades to the units over the next year. That sets off alarm bells because often that's code for raising rent or moving people out to remodel. When we pressed them for specifics, the reps gave vague answers about improving the living conditions for everyone's benefit. I don't trust it one bit. To be fair, in the months since they took over, maintenance has been prompt and they even installed new laundry machines. So short term, things look rosy. But we're not blind to the long-term play. They bought this building to make money, and likely more money than Mr. Burns was making, since he was limited by rent control and us troublemakers. I wouldn't be surprised if, once our leases end, they try to hike the rent legally or find pretexts to not renew unless we agree to big increases. It's the same fight all over again, potentially, just with a nicer smile on it. As for Mr. Burns, the city did make him pay those fines before the sale went through. Apparently, he had to clear his violations to transfer the property. It must have stung him a lot. I almost wish I could have seen his face signing that check, so at least there's that. He faced consequences and is out of our lives. Good riddance. Last I heard, he's under investigation for other code violations in another building he owns. Classic. Some might say we won because we got rid of the bad landlord and nobody ended up paying those illegal increases. That's true, to a point. I'm proud of what we did. We showed that collective action isn't futile. We improved things, at least temporarily, and we held someone accountable. Those are big things. Our tenant group even inspired folks in 2 other buildings nearby to start their own associations. They actually reached out to us for advice. So there's a ripple of positive change.